Wonderful. I am very proud to introduce the November business meeting. This is our annual business meeting, but the best part of it is that Ruthie Danielsen is going to speak to us about the Asian Giant Hornet. And this is something that she's gotten very up and personal with. She's gotten fascinated by it and learned a lot. Ruthie lives up in Mount Baker, and well, no, that's not where you live. No, but that's the bee association you're a part of, Mount Baker Bee Association. Anyway, I'll turn it over. I'm Kit High, and I'm president of Puget Sound Beekeepers Association. Thank you for joining us tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Ruthie. Welcome, Ruthie.
Hi. Yeah, I live actually near a town called Birch Bay, which is right near the Canadian border, right? Blaine is my mailing zip code area. So I'm about 5 miles away from where the first nest was found as the crow flies. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and get in with this presentation here. So I'm also going to start it from slideshow from the beginning. Okay, there we go. All right, so I've got about 25 slides in total. As you can see, Asian Giant Hornet 2019 to question mark. Well, we hope that it would be until 2021. Maybe next year we won't have any hornet sightings. And if you go for 3 years without any, then they are considered eradicated. But we'll need to trap for the next 3 years after this for the scientists to say, yeah, we probably did a good job. I'm going to give you some background. Maybe some of you know this information, maybe not. But in the summer of 2019 on Vancouver Island in the town of Nanaimo, a beekeeper was sitting at his beehives swatting yellow jackets, like we've all done. Just his yellow jackets, he's just watching the bees fly in and out, and he's whacking the yellow jackets as they harass his bees. And here comes this really large insect, and it was flying right up to his hives. And so he took his swatter and swatted it, and that insect merely landed on the ground, jumped back up, went back to his hive. So he swatted it again, only with a lot more force this time. The hornet merely landed on the ground, got back up, and flew off. And it was significant for this beekeeper. He went, oh my gosh, what is that? So the next day he got a larger whack. And sure enough, the hornets came to visit his hives again. This time he was able to actually whack it hard and catch it. And he took it, the sample, the actual insect itself, and got a hold of Paul Van Westerndorp, who is the BC provincial apiarist, and said, Paul, what is this thing? Paul looked at it, did a bit of study, got back a hold of him and said, oh my God, that's an Asian Giant Hornet. They've never been in North America. He got a hold of Washington State Department of Agriculture and let them know. And that's when our team down here at our state agency started learning about the Asian Giant Hornet. Otherwise, they knew nothing about it. Now, the BC government didn't do much. There was really no media attention. It was actually the beekeepers on Vancouver Island that got together and let the people of Nanaimo know that they had an Asian Giant Hornet and what they looked like and to look for them. They had about 4 or 5 sightings, and it was the beekeepers, 2 of the beekeepers over there that actually plotted the sightings and went ahead and figured that it's probably in a green little park right in the middle of Nanaimo. And so those husband and wife team went walking through the little park looking for the hornet nest. They'd done a little research, found out that it was, and talked to Paul, and he told them a little bit about it. And as the husband was walking along, the wife was ahead of him, he got stung right in the chest and stopped, and the wife went back up and they backed up and looked, and it was actually one of the worker hornets was warning them away from the nest, and that's when they found the nest. They got a hold of Conrad Verby, who is, he's an entomologist that lives on Vancouver Island. And they dressed up in snowsuits, and Conrad had on Kevlar vest, Kevlar sleeves, Kevlar on his pants. And that night they went ahead and eradicated the nest. He got stung 4 times, but he's used to being stung. He collects yellow jacket nests for a living to milk them for anti-venom. So his body is probably more prone to, less likely to have a horrible reaction. Again, no media attention. It was on a radio station. I heard about it from Canada. I live right on the Canadian border, and so I get Canadian radio. Anyway, okay. Again, now we're rolling into the fall, summertime. They've eradicated that nest. We still hadn't heard about it in the media here in the States until a fellow found one on his porch. The fellow that found one on his porch in Whatcom County, northern Whatcom County, he didn't know anything about the hornet, and he tried to research, well, geez, what's this thing? I've never seen anything so huge. And a friend of his said, hey, you better get a hold of the state and let him know. So he, not because he knew he should, he did it because, he was led there, and he got a hold of the state. And then that's when it finally hit our media up here in our local newspaper, Bellingham Herald, that an Asian giant hornet had been found in North America. So now as beekeepers, okay, heard it on the radio. We talked about it in our club a little bit, but it's like, oh man, wow, someone found one. Wow, what does it mean? So then Ted McFall, he's our Mount Baker Beekeeper president, wasn't at the time, is now. He came to a meeting with photographs of one of his hives in late October that had all of their heads decapitated in front of the hive. The entire hive, his best hive, and he's got about 45 hives, all the bees were dead, 60,000 bees. He opened up the hive thinking, what the heck, what did this? And, is it a shrew? Was it major yellow jacket attack? And he opened up the hive and all the honey was there. All the honey was still in the hive. Only the brood was gone. So he came to the bee club meeting and we were all going, whoa, gosh, I wonder if it was one of them hornets, right? And so we got a hold of our bee club got a hold of Paul Van Westerndorp, the Canadian provincial apiarist, and to see if he would come down and give us a presentation. And did he know any more about the hornet since they eradicated the one on Vancouver Island? And he agreed to come down in January. We had a huge snowstorm, and that was actually pushed until February. And Sven Spicinger, who's our Washington State Department of Agriculture invasive species head, he's an entomologist. He came up too to attend, and I had the opportunity actually to have supper with him. I didn't know these two humans, and when you have people come and talk for your bee club, you meet with them and maybe have supper. So there was 3 of us that had supper with them and had a little personal connection then. And Paul gave an unbelievable presentation. It was an hour long about what this hornet does to honeybee hives, and that when you have this hornet, if it got a foothold, how it is the apex predator, there's nothing that hurts it, what it could do to our industry and then to agriculture. It was really a terrifying presentation, about an hour long, about the details of the hornet. And then everyone left. The meeting was over and everybody left. And then COVID hit. So the next day. So I kind of mulled around, I'm a person that when I get an emotional response to something, I need to act, I need to do something, or it drives me crazy. So I went ahead and called Sven the next day on his little card, gave him a call and said, hey, if I can get some beekeepers, they weren't planning on doing any trapping until July. And the presentation told us that the queens come out in April. They didn't know when in North America, but pretty early. And I said, geez, if I get a bunch of beekeepers, would you work with us, please? And we'll put up the traps, we'll check them. And he said yes. So because COVID had hit, it's like, how do we get the supplies and all that kind of stuff? Well, they ended up giving us and making up kits. And these were tree sap traps. So what the queen does when she first comes out of overwinter, she needs some carbohydrates. She won't be able to get any protein. And I'll get into that later in the presentation, but she needs some carbohydrates. So what they do in Asia is the queens come out from overwintering and they go find tree sap. So what they had us do was cut holes, and the type of tree in Asia that they do are oak. So oak trees in Asia produce a sap at that time of year. Unfortunately, our trees, they produced a little sap the first day, and I kept having to cut my tree because it just dried up. I mean, it wasn't doing nothing. I had 7 traps on my trap line. We had 38 beekeepers in our beekeeping club say that they would trap, for them. This is a sticky board. It's about 14 inches by 12. And I mean sticky. That stuff is any bug, if it caught anywhere on me, it stuck to you. So putting it up was pretty entertaining. Lots of cussing. And then you put the chicken wire on the outside of it, because if a bird lands, it'd get stuck. Right? It is sticky stuff. And they use this kind of sticky stuff in Asia actually to catch Asian giant hornets. So we started in March of 2020. Trapping. Actually, March, we got the supplies to everybody. April through May was when we actually trapped, all of April and May. And it was, they sent us all the traps. They sent us envelopes to mail them back to them so they could analyze the insects. And they sent us all of the mailing, because it was actually quite a bit of mailing to mail those back to them. So that's what we did. So then, still there was a little media attention, but not much yet. I mean, we're all talking about it as beekeepers, but really the general public, people hadn't understood what would happen if the Asian giant hornet got a foothold in North America. They just didn't comprehend how devastating it could be. So Washington State Department of Agriculture had been contacted by the New York Times, and they can't give out our name. So Sven got a hold of me and said, hey, there's this, journalist, and he wants to do an article on the Asian giant hornets. Would you like to do it? So Teddy and I said, sure, we'll talk to him. So this guy came in and spent a day at my house and a day at Teddy's getting our take. And I showed him the map that we made and where all our traps were and all that kind of stuff. And so then the article hit, and he called them murder hornets. It's like once he named it murder hornets, then as you guys know, it just over 1 billion people, literally. This is stats, real stats. Over 1 billion people saw that. It just blew up. And of course, our club, we had everybody from Georgia to Nebraska, Florida, getting a hold of our club. So think about it, Kit. If you had people, I mean, your website and emails to your club, it just was like, oh my God. So I felt so bad, and so did Teddy, that we said, oh, we'll respond to everybody. The secretary, I mean, she's going nuts. So we did. We called everybody back, thanked them for their concern and their suggestions. There were some pretty entertaining suggestions of what we should do. And everybody, thought they had a murder hornet in their state, of course, but as we know, they're just here. Anyway, it was a really interesting experience. And then, lo and behold, these 2 movie people call us. I mean, so from a documentarian, Michael Stevenson and James. He's out of New York and Michael's out of Los Angeles, and they wanted to do a documentary on what was, the murder hornets and really the collaboration between the beekeepers in the state. So we agreed, sure, fine. Any more attention we could get to this, which I think was good. The murder hornets, for some, got really angry because they called them murder hornets. They should be Asian giant hornets. But in reality, it really did expand people's awareness of the hornet, and that's the point. We need more people to know and look for these hornets. So they came with 11-person crew. And they had all the spiffy movie camera stuff and, sound things and sound man and health professional. And I mean, it wasn't like 3 guys and a camera. It was like this, it was an amazing experience, actually. And they moved here from wherever they're from. They all moved here and got homes and lived here from June until November, and put that amount of time into documenting all of the stuff that was going on. And then lo and behold, July rolls around and I caught the first Asian giant hornet worker in my trap in North America. So, I mean, it was rather cosmic. I thought, it's like, oh my God, in my trap. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it because Chris Looney was showing USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, how we were trapping, and he was walking by one of my traps, which is only a half a mile from my house, and he said, "Oh my, there's a hornet in there." And so they it before I actually got a chance. But I knew exactly when I baited it, and so he knew that it was 3 days from the day that I last changed the juice until we caught the hornet. So that was pretty amazing. Now, there's a human, Matt Waddington. He lives in Duval. He might be a member of your beekeeping association. Matt had heard all of what was going on up here. We in blogs that we were on, and Matt Waddington from Duval went ahead. He's an engineer, and he looked at all the pictures from Asia on how they catch Asian giant hornets, and he made these not from drawings, but just from pictures, and he extrapolated all the sizes. And this is what they use in Asia to catch Asian giant hornets and protect their hives. Is a hornet will fly up along and go to put a pheromone mark on this hive. It will fly into the entrance, and then when it leaves, it flies up to this light. So here you can see it flies up. There's cones there that have a little hole, and it'll fly and get caught in these areas. And so Matt made us 14 of these traps to put on our hives up here. So hopefully to protect our hives, as well as maybe catch live hornets, because the goal was to find out where they are, put live traps up, and then try to be able to track them back to their nest, whether it's beeline. We didn't know anything about the little marker yet, and the state hadn't even figured that out yet. It's never been done, what they did. You can see I caught a couple drones in mine, so it was like, oh, I'm sorry, boys, but it's all for a good cause. So all in 2022, 1,227 public traps were registered. So that's how many people actually got in the program with the state. Probably many more than that were up. Including the state, there were over 2,000 traps, mostly in Whatcom County. However, I know folks down south put them up too, and on the Olympic Peninsula. I mean, folks were, and that's great, because just like, how did the hornet get here? If that hornet hops on a rig and gets transported on a rig down south, I mean, it doesn't have to fly there. All it has to do is hitch a ride. So they could disperse. 15 hornets during that time frame were caught in traps. So whether they be live traps or in our liquid bottle traps. So in total, 16 hornets were verified by people. So we got enough that 16 individuals that aren't necessarily, in fact, they weren't beekeepers, actually saw the critter, took a picture of it, and knew to send it to the state. So when that happens, you end up with a bunch more bottle traps in the area, in a radius every 1/4 mile, on an 8-quadrant range. So you go north, south, east, west, and then north, northwest, north, south, exactly, etc. And so for the whole summer, we just continued trapping and having the film guys here while there's COVID. So everybody's like, oh gosh, oh my. And then lo and behold, October 22nd rolls around, actually about October 20th, and we found the first nest. And it was like a big deal. You know, we were just all incredibly elated. The scientists, you know, when folks talk about gluing a tracker on a hornet, those trackers are used for ground beetles. They've never, ever attached a tracker onto a winged insect. So whether it be with glue, you know, that didn't work. Y'all heard about that. They glued their wings together. The scientists were so demoralized that day. It was so sad to see. They were just like really frustrated, but never give up. So then they caught another one, and of course, then used the dental floss. they tied the tracker on with dental floss, which was great. This nest was really active, aggressive, and did you know, when they took it down. It was so high up in a tree, you know, about 8 feet up, that in the area where it was in the guy's backyard, it didn't bug his kids or his dog or him at all. They don't, since they're the apex predator, they're non-aggressive towards humans. But in total, if you look here, based on the time of year, right, October, it was in queen production. 76 queens had already been born, and maybe more that already left the nest. They don't know. 108 were in the capped cell with pupa, right? So they were capped and the pupa's in there, and that they think based on the size, those were likely queens, right? So now we've got close to 200. There were 190 total larvae still in there. So it's like, okay, until they wouldn't know what it was going to be, right? Is it going to be another worker? Is she, you know, just filling up her workforce, or would that be queens too? They don't know that. But this nest probably would have easily had 250 queens. There were only 9 males, which they're going, huh, were the males already outside the nest and waiting for the girls to come? Because it's usually male production and then the queens come later. So they don't know. And just 6 unhatched eggs. So the unhatched eggs were in this bottom little comb down here. And here you can see on the side there, you can see this is the nest inverted. So this is the top here, and then the bottom is down here. So that's with it stacked out of the tree. And this tree was rotten all the way along. You can see where the foam is, and then the foam comes up, and then they actually sprayed some foam right in the hole where their entrance was to keep them contained. And then chopped that out and blasted it with CO2 a couple times and froze them, got them really cold so they wouldn't move around and hurt people. And so, yay, we have the tree, yay, the nest, at least one, yay. Now, we never did find the nest down by me, and I'm 5 miles away from that one up there, so that was unsettling. But I haven't trapped anything, and we haven't trapped any more this year in this area, so who knows. They don't know much about the hornets. They don't know their routes. So we were getting ready for the Attack of the Murder Hornets on Discovery Plus to be released, and it's like, yay. I hadn't seen it yet. It was going to come out in late February, and they got a hold of me and asked if I'd preview it, because they wanted to do some kind of award show down in Malibu or something. And so my internet's bad most of the time here, and they rented me a house in Blaine, and they set up an Apple laptop up there, and they put the movie on it. They rented me a whole house. I mean, it was like, are you kidding me? Anyway, so I went up there and watched the movie all by myself. And that's when I learned in the movie that the nest and the contents were not with the scientists at all, that they had not been studied. It wasn't until I saw the documentary 4 months after we got the nest. The homeowner had demanded that all the contents be returned to him. A day after they took the tree down, a day after they took the threat away from his family. He said, nope, they're mine, it's on my property. And so they were all returned to him. So there had been actually zero research completed on this up to that stage in February. The scientists, I did learn that the scientists had a few of the hornets that they were able to send to the Cairo lab, the lab where they freeze them, cryo repository in DC, but that was it. Otherwise, they brought it back to him the next day. And at first, I was really, really angry. The volunteers, all in Washington State, Seattle North. I mean, all the folks that had spent the time and effort to try and find this thing, and someone just wants to make money off of it. I was really mad. And then I get into my, well, what are you going to do about it mode? So I calmed down and started thinking as opposed to just having emotion. And I bought the nest. So I found him on I didn't know who he was. All I knew was the name in the movies. I looked in the phone book and there are like 4,000 Polanders that live up here. I actually found him on Facebook. I looked at Facebook to see if I could find, based on postings. And sure enough, there he was. So I went ahead and messaged him and asked him if I could, if he was selling. I'd heard that he was on the radio on a Friday before the movie was coming out to sell the hornets at $50 a pop or $70 a pop or something like that. And so I said, hey, I understand you're selling the hornets. Are you interested in selling the nest? And he messaged me back. I said, oh, I'm in the documentary also. He messaged me back that, yeah, he'd sell me any and all. So then I asked him, well, how much? And he messaged me back, oh, well, how much will you pay me? It's like, oh, geez. So I messaged him back with my phone number and said, can you call me? So we went through a little tit tat, and then I offered him a really large sum of money. And at that stage, he said, well, I want to wait till the documentary comes out. And I went, oh, you're setting the price. Okay. I said, well, all right. Okay, fine. Now I knew the movie, and excuse me, I'm a little colorful, but I knew the movie made him look like an asshole. So it's like, just, it made him look greedy. And he didn't know that yet. So I was worried that when he saw the movie that he wasn't going to sell me the nest, but I went ahead and said, okay, whatever. He called me back on Monday and he was angry that the movie had portrayed him like they had. And I said, well, you said all those things, but will you sell me the nest? It's going to go for a good cause. And it was during that discussion that I realized he just didn't know anything about hornets. He knew nothing about the impact to the industry. And then my heart softened quite a bit. He just didn't know. And so that's when I realized that it's our job that know these things to explain them to the folks that don't understand. And that's what I was going to use. And so he wanted a higher price. I told him I don't barter. I'm a retired person. That's a lot of money for me, and that's all I can afford. Give me a break. And so he sold me the nest. Yay! And this is the day. This is when I brought it home. This is when it first came. It was all frozen, so he kept it well, because all of these things will rot if it's not stored properly. So I just took it out, and then I called Teddy. Here's Teddy, the man whose bees were decapitated. He's the only human I told. And he came over to my shop and looked at the nest and the contents. And I got a total of 10 queens. He didn't want to give me any queens because he could sell all those. And there were very few males, so I got one male. And I only had one worker, but you can see the difference in them, and I'll show you those in a minute. And then he didn't care about the larva and pupa, so I got a bunch of those. I found those really fascinating because they got little mouths. As soon as that egg hatches, they have a little mouth. It's just really interesting. So here's the comb up closer. While the scientists were working on these, the hornets were actually emerging. So all of these ragged edges were hornets that actually emerged, and these were all queens. There's a queen right there that is emerging, so you can see her in the cell. He didn't want the hornets to continue to destroy the capping. So Chris went ahead and cut these right here. You can see the cuts so that they would quit eating and destroying the cappings. Okay, here's the back of the comb, and I thought it was just beautiful. They're really incredible, the build of them, and it's all pulp, so they use a paper, tree barks and stuff to build it, chew it up and lay it out. Here's the actual tree. So this is the inside of the tree. You can see it split in half. There's one half and the other half, and you just roll those two together, and that's the tree. The entrance was down here where you can see where they foamed it to foam the entrance. So it kind of came in here. When I called the scientist as soon as I got it and told Washington State Department of Agriculture I had the nest and to please come get it, they were pretty amazed. I said, I don't want it at my house. Please come get it, study it, do whatever. But I do want to show it at our local fair. If you know, you guys would agree to that. I'd like to show it in Linden. That's where the hornets are, you know, trying to live. And that's the humans. We need these people up here to know what they look like. So of course they agree. They said, oh God, no, of course, Ruthie, sure. So anyway, so here I was building, this is after they'd had it for 6 months and studied it. And we'll get into that a little bit, what they learned. But here I'm building the case that it's going to go into for the Linden Fair. But this shows you, you know, where they marked it. You know, here was the opening. This was where number 1 was attached, and 2 comb, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 was right in here. Yeah, so that's where they were going in and out and then going up the nest. What they learned from it was a scientist in Australia had just published a paper where he had done a DNA analysis of the frass, the poop inside the cells. So that was one of the first things they did with the nest, was collect the poop in the bottom of each one of those cells to find out what were they eating in North America. And actually they were eating everything. So they ate everything from flies to beetles to our honeybees to yellow jackets to bald-faced hornets to wasps, dragonflies, moths, and butterflies. Every kind of critter we got around here. Again, they're the apex predator. And there was cow DNA in the poop. So whether they ate a discarded hamburger from somebody, or maybe, you know, afterbirth from calving, don't know, but there was cow DNA. And here was the display for the Linden Fair. We had thousands of people that came by, so it was actually really good. And we got on King 5 News, so again, more exposure. The more people that understand the challenge of having this species, you know, get a foothold in North America, and the more people that know what they look like, the better chance we have. It's just not going to work with us beekeepers and the 4 people in the States trapping. You know, the general public needs to be aware and look for these things. So that was the goal, and I think we did pretty well. So now the nest is actually in DC. It just after the fair, we packaged it all up, and it went to the Smithsonian. So Nest Zero is going to be a part of the Smithsonian exhibit in the Museum of Natural History. And so I'm thrilled that it made it there. And that's really what the scientists wanted. It is a piece of history, and even though an icky one. Now, off with Nest 1 to Nest 2. So Nest 2 was discovered in, it was a long time. We were hardly catching anything at all. And finally, in August, the same day the fair opened, which was entertaining, Nest 2 was a person saw a hornet. And again, same thing. It wasn't in a trap. They saw the hornet. The scientists went there and captured one live. And so this nest consisted of 9 combs. You can see it now. The tree is already cut down, right? And they've pulled the bark away. So, you know, that was all covered before. 97% of them in Asia are ground nesters. That's the status. That's the data. 3% are in trees where their entrance is up in a tree. And so this one, actually, the primary entrance was at the base of this tree. So they usually dig out underneath tree roots and make this huge area, and the workers just pile the dirt right out. And so, of course, this queen, she went in at the base, but she went up in that rotten tree and then started her comb up in the top. Now, one of the things I've seen on the internet, you know, on YouTube and stuff in the last 6 months or a year, is pictures of hornets' nests, Asian giant hornets' nests that aren't Asian giant hornet nests at all. Asian giant hornet nests will always be enclosed. They'll be enclosed in the ground, they'll be enclosed in the tree, or they'll be enclosed in a building. Not very often in building walls, but you will not see them hanging like a bald-faced hornet nest. It just won't happen. So all of those you see on the internet, those are not Asian giant hornet nests. They're you know, Asian hornet, sorrow, Asian crabrow, but they're not the Asian giant hornet. And so, you know, this year, yay, 3 out of 4 nests now have had entrances up in a tree. Now, talking with Chris and Sven, what they're saying is that might be a learned behavior. In other words, the queen leaves from a tree. And so when she goes to, you know, overwinter and find a new spot, and then she comes back. And when she's looking for a nest site, she goes to a tree. So that might be why they're doing that. They're not sure. Here is nest 2, the little pieces of it here. You can see now the pupa here in all the cappings and the larva, right? So pupa's all under these cappings. You can see the larva, their little heads, their little bodies. This is comb 1. This was the first one the queen made right here. And then what she'll do is make this herself. She'll fly back and forth in that March, April timeframe, build this, and then lay her eggs. She'll take care of the young herself. And then come when these guys all emerge, then she'll never leave that nest. She'll stay there. And then she'll just lay eggs. These guys will take care of the work until these guys are born. Here's the nest laid out in my shop. So this is one day after they'd eradicated this number 2 nest. And Chris called and said, "Hey, Ruthie, you want to see number 2?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." So this is like they'd been blasted with CO2, just made cold, and then put into an ice chest that has ice in it. I mean, it's like cold. And he pulled out the nest components and put them on my bench, and they warmed up slowly. So here's that first comb right here. I just thought this was a really beautiful picture. This is what the queen made and built that kind of structure that she attaches the nest to. And then these are about 2.5 to 3 inches long. So when you're looking at the end, you can't really see the true depth. These are huge. They're really huge. And pictures, unfortunately, just don't do them justice. When you hold one in your hand, you go, "Oh my God, this is just huge." And here's another view from that side of the same number 1 comb in number 2 nest. And there's just, this stuff is so cool. They spin that, I think, themselves when they're finally ready to go into the pupa stage. Here's a picture of the eggs. So you can see the eggs in here that she lays and attaches. And then you can see the beginnings of these little heads. This larva, as soon as the larva hatch and get that little head, they have a little mouth. And you can't really see it from these pictures, but as soon as they have a little mouth, they're mouth fed. So the actual adult hornets feed them by the mouth, the meatballs that when they go out and running around. And here's another picture of some more of the comb. And you can see they're just pretty amazing. And they're beautiful white. Underneath that capping, the pupa, it goes through a metamorphosis. And here, these are actual from Nest Zero, the pupas I got. So as soon as the cap goes on, the hornet starts to get definition, starts to get little legs, little antennas, start kind of forming color to the eyes and those mandibles right there. A little bit later goes on, they'll get a little darker, see more definition. A little bit later, a little more darker in definition. And this is just about, she's ready to start eating her way out. Now, I thought I'd tell you, I'm sorry, I don't have any pictures of Nest 3 and Nest 4, but Nest 2 consisted of 1,473 life stages. That was a big nest. There were 563 cap cells, 422 larvae, 292 more eggs. It had a ground entrance. There were no males. Again, it was in August. Males don't get born until later. Nest 3 consisted of 4 combs, 449 life stages. So it wasn't very big. Its entrance was 7 foot up in a tree. So it didn't go in and up. It went in and kind of down. That nest was pretty lethargic. It didn't even attack the scientists. There were 28 males already in September. That's odd. They normally aren't born until later. So they think that one was where a queen had mated, a virgin queen had mated with her brothers too often. And it didn't make viable workers. And the eggs were just males. And if you have only males, you're not going to have a robust nest. Nest 4 consisted of 10 combs. That was a huge one too. She hadn't really gotten down to doing much laying though. There were 777 life stages. The nest entrance was 22 feet up in the tree. There were 128 eggs. Those guys were really aggressive towards the scientists. Active protection, and they even clicked at them. So hornets, if you walk up near a nest, they'll give you warnings. If you're aware to listen, they'll start clicking at you. They'll click their mandibles together, and it actually makes a sound. Click, 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 click. It'll be click, 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 click. Anyway, pretty creepy. Okay, queens. There's a queen. New queens are all produced in the fall, not earlier. They don't get into queen production until October, November timeframe. Her job is to feed, mate, feed some more, and then split. So her sole job when she's born is to hook up and then get good and fat. The fatter she gets, the more food and protein and fat she can store, the better success she has of overwintering. The following spring, the queen will, after she overwinters from wherever she's at, then she'll leave that spot. It won't be her nesting spot. She'll leave that spot and look for a new nest. Unfortunately, the scientists do not know how far. So they don't know if the queens go a mile, a half mile, just down, road, or they can fly 20 miles an hour, 20 to 22 miles an hour. So they could go a long ways, but they just don't know. Research has not been done. So their dispersal rate, they just don't know. 50% of the queens will successfully mate according to the statistics in Asia. So if you have 300 queen production, 150 will go ahead and successfully mate. And then of those, 15% will successfully overwinter. So 300 queens, which is about an average size nest in queen production, according to the stats, can give you, 25 to 30 new nests based on the stats. They live a year, the queens. So that's again, a reason why they're in the fall. They only live a year, and then she will die. They will not reuse that nest. Okay, here's an example of one of the displays I did that shows the difference in size. Here's a yellow jacket queen. Here's an Asian giant hornet queen. Here's a bald-faced hornet queen. You can see, here's a bumblebee queen. And here's a little honeybee queen. You can see the difference in the size. Here's all just the different insects we have here. And you can just look at the size. There's no comparison. And the most common thing people say when they see one in person is, oh my God, I didn't realize they were that large. Queens will lay only female workers until late summer. So her workforce will be entirely female. Just like kind of the honeybees, except they'll go ahead and do drones a little bit earlier, right? Queen production needs a lot of protein. So when they are in queen production, these girls are big. They need a lot of protein for that nest. And that's why the beehives attacks, the slaughters occur in the fall. And when they're in male and queen production, because they need a lot of protein to fulfill the needs of that production. Now they can come to your hive a month earlier and mark it or so. Once they get that pheromone mark in there, and they will go and look at all of your hives and determine which one smells the healthiest, the one that has the most brood. And they will pick out the best one, and then they will just go ahead and mark it. And then all the sisters will know which one to go for when the time comes. It's pretty fascinating. And I know you guys probably read that in Asia, the Asian honeybee will go ahead and ball them up so that they don't mark it and kill them by cooking them up to 118 degrees. And then also in Asia, they'll go ahead and put dung on top of that pheromone smell to mask the smell. But our little honeybees don't know that. The hornet strategy, and that's why, nets and stuff don't work too well, because the hornet strategy is to get all the bees out of the hive. And so all they got to do is start lopping off a few heads of your returning foragers, and those bees are freaking out, screaming and making all kinds of pheromone smell, saying we're under attack, and that's going to get all the rest of the bees in that hive to start coming out, and their little heads are going to get all lopped off, and there's more pheromone smell, and so and on it goes. So they want nothing to do with carrying those bees back. There's not enough food in the bee. It's only the little, they'll kill a bee and cut off its head and go in the tree and pull off its legs and eat the thorax, or grab it anyway and make a meatball out of it. But their goal is to get after the brood, all that lovely larva, all that pure protein and brood that's in our hives. And that's the slaughter phase. Males, here's a male. Males are produced again in late summer, early fall, so they can be sexually ready when the queens are being produced. They need to be sexually mature, and the boys will hang out in front of the nests. In Asia, that's what they do. Once they're born, they get fed, and then they'll fly and just kind of hang out and wait for the queens to come. They don't have a drone congregation area away. They just park it right in front of the nest. So the males, their one job, kind of like honeybees with our drones, their one job is to pass on the genetics. They don't do anything else. No foraging, no protecting, nothing, no work building the nest. They just pass on the genetics. They have longer antenna, much longer antenna than the worker or the queen, and they have one more body segment. Otherwise, they're about the same size as a worker. The workers, you can see the difference right there in the antenna and how compared to the male. Here's a worker, and workers, they'll live only 3 to 4 weeks. So they work themselves to death, kind of like our honeybee girls in the summertime. From egg to pupa emerging is 40 days, approximately. They do everything, these girls. They do all the food, the building, the protection. everything. Their stinger, and I'm sorry, I should have pulled out one of the stingers. I didn't know how to do that. The stingers are 1/4 inch long, and they can sting you multiple times. And the reason that it's the amount, it's not that the venom is any more toxic than you know, a yellow jacket or a honeybee. It's that the amount they inject in you is so much that multiple stings, and it causes necropsy, just the volume of this venom, and it blows up your cells. So if you get stung multiple times, it goes into your bloodstream, and then it starts attacking your organs. And that's how they die in Asia. They go into septic shock and stuff. It starts attacking the inside from the inside out. I thought this was a pretty cool, I really like this. When we pin these, here's a queen, and when they walk around, they lay their wings back like other insects. They just lay their wings back. But when they're in tight quarters, or like up in your eaves of your house eating your paper wasp nests, they actually fold them even smaller. So they can fold this wing yet again. And so when Chris Looney came up and did these, because I didn't want to mess with, I figured I'd break the wings. So I didn't want to mess with them. Also, look at these unbelievable like hooks they have on their legs. These things caught on my fingerprints. I mean, they would catch. So when they're hooking a bee in the air, it's just they're really, really, really sharp, and they're on all of their feet. They can climb anything. And this here is one of the creepiest things. Well, most interesting, I guess, not creepy. Some people go yuck, but adult hornets cannot eat solid food. So when people start talking about, well, why aren't you using meat baits and that kind of stuff? An adult hornet cannot swallow solid food. So when they go and even kill one of your honeybees, they can't just munch it down for energy. They can rip its head off and take the thorax and make a meatball out of it, but they can't swallow it. They can only fuel themselves with carbohydrates while they're flying around doing their duties. So that's why all of our baits are carbohydrates. That's why the orange juice and cooking rice wine, as opposed to the other meat type baits. The meatballs are fed to the larva. So they'll go get an insect, make a meatball out of it, fly back to the nest. That's what the larvae eat. The larva can swallow solid food. And then the larva process that, and they turn it into a gel, and they regurgitate it back up. And that is how the adult hornets get all of their proteins and fats, is by the babies feeding back the adults. It's an interesting, I think, Darwin thing. It's like, yeah, you got to feed your kids or you ain't getting fed. So that might fix a lot of stuff in you know, around. Yeah, you don't get fed unless you feed your kids. Anyway, in Asia, the reason why so many people die is they collect this. Not only do they eat the larva and the pupa and stuff, but this liquid that those little larvae regurgitate is used for high performance enhancement. It's some kind of pure protein, high performance stuff. Now, all the pictures of my hornets have been kind of brown. That's because they've been dead for a long time and they lost their color. But if you see one in live flying around, they're going to be this bright orange, this color. Now, here's a close-up of the hornet larva that was sitting on my bench, and within 10 minutes of the hornets sitting there warming up, they started moving and they started regurgitating that protein stuff out of their bodies, and their little heads were going back and forth, and their little mandibles were making clicking sounds. It was, I wish I would have gotten a video of it. It was so mesmerizing and all I could do was just take a picture. It was really, so their little heads are all, you can see right there is their little head. And then right there is that where their mandibles are going to be. So this is their back always, and their little mouths are always, the stripe comes up. Again, they just start moving. And remember how deep they were? There's really a lot of larvae in there. It was pretty amazing. And then they started all clicking, making that clicking sound. It was really, oh my God, pretty amazing. And that's about it. There's the queen. You can see the difference. There's the male, the antenna, one more body segment, and a worker. And I think that's about it. This year, we haven't had any new sightings since the last September eradication. Washington Department of Agriculture is currently now testing a drone to actually track the tracker rather than having to run through bushes. They're working with drone manufacturers right now to see how to get that done. There's 7 different baits that they have sent to Asia to be tested to see if we can get a pheromone bait that works better. You have to have a bunch of hornets around in order to test it, though. We don't have any, you know, if you're trying to test something, but you don't know where the nest is, you know, it's like, does it work or doesn't it? Heck, was there even a hornet around? So they finally are able to send it to Asia after the lockdowns happened and everything got locked down. Canada tried meat traps for a long time, didn't work, and they've gone back to orange juice and cooking rice wine. They're checking all the frass out of the new nest to see if they're eating anything differently or just everything again. We haven't gotten that results back yet. On the 4th nest, the scientists had a week, right? The one that was 22 feet up. And actually they captured 71 hornets and they tagged 60 of them. And they got all kinds of cool information about how that these hornets fly, when they fly, early in the morning to twilight. They've been active. You know, that 17 of them were carrying wood and, you know, 12 of them were carrying meat, or, you know, the DNA matches 100% for all the nests we found. So there isn't a new introduction. And I think that's it. So I'm going to end stop share. There we go. Any questions?
We did actually have 2 in the chat, and everyone, please contribute your own questions. First one was actually by Kit, when she saw the cappings and she was asking, are they made of wax? Then I think we saw them closer up and they more look like they're made of paper, but
fiber. And I think that, and I have to verify this. This is one of the questions I didn't ask the entomologist. Is that I think they spin them themselves and close themselves in, because you saw that it was getting thicker and thicker and thicker from the inside. You saw one that was really almost transparent, and then some of them were pretty thick. So I think they spin them themselves, the larva, and cap themselves in.
Cool. How would they get paper to do that if they're inside?
I don't know that it's paper. You know, yeah. And they're fed. I mean, you know, so it's kind of like I would think like a butterfly, right? They spin themselves right in. They just produce that stuff out of their mouth. So yeah. Maybe it's pure protein fiber. I don't know. It's like, yeah.
That would have been my guess, actually, if they're fed high protein. If I think cross species, bird feathers are fibrous protein, for instance, so it would make sense.
Yeah, I'll ask it, and I'll send you that. I'll ask him. I did ask him how the queens are, you know, it's like, what's the difference between queen production and male production? Well, male production's normal, just like, you know, unfertilized eggs, but queen production, and so this is a response I got. It's looked into the queen determination stuff, seems complicated, involving a blend of what they are fed, pheromones, particular hydrocarbons, and even vibrations. I will need to keep looking. So again, one of the things that there's one paper that they all refer to. One paper on these Asian giant hornets has ever been written. So there's so much research that needs to be done to understand them still. It's, you know, it's kind of like how much research has been done on our species here, on the bald-faced hornet or the yellow jacket, unless someone's doing a PhD at some university. I mean, our governments aren't throwing money at that to say, oh yeah, study this, right? So a species that doesn't exist in North America and in Asia, they've been there forever. So no research. Anyway.
Cool. We have a couple of
Ruthie?
questions.
I wanted to ask, I saw a video, and it was the most creepy thing I've seen. And they were making a noise, and it looked like they were scratching on the side of the cell to attract someone to come and feed them.
Yes.
And have you heard that?
Yes, that's what they were doing in my shop. That's what I'm saying. They were starting to make these noises and clicking and scratching and clicking. And they were doing that with their mouth too. Those little mandibles, they were clicking and scratching. Yeah. Yeah. Except that they were, you know, and then they were at the same time, they were regurgitating that liquid out of their mouths, and they were filling up the cells with the stuff. It was just amazing. Yeah. Yeah. That's like a baby bird, right? You know, when mom flies by, they all go, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. So the same thing is.
The sound was just creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just awful.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it was. I agree. Can you, and I only heard, you know, as they were waking up, maybe, I don't know what it would be like in the whole nest when you have the whole nest in there, if, you know, you listen through the hole, but you couldn't do that because you'd get stunned.
Well, also the video that I saw was really interesting because they were all moving in tandem. There'd be, you know, a group over here that would move one way and a group over here that would move another way. And it was like they were all kind of, you know, and how are they connected enough that they're knowing how to all keep moving in the same direction? It was just very bizarre.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't know how they know that. And I'm pretty sure the scientists don't know how they know that.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen some of the videos of the, I think it's Japanese that go out and collect these? It's amazing that you know, they're so brave. I mean, it's like they don't look like they're totally, you know, encased in the kind of suits that our scientists are wearing here.
Right, and 40 to 50 people in Asia die a year.
Yeah.
So,
And
brave is one way you could describe it.
And they eat them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so they'll eat. I don't know about it. I'm of the vintage, I'm 65, and when I was younger, you know, I drank mezcal and I ate the worm. So it's the same kind of thing. You know, in Asia, they put it in drinks, have a little worm floating in there. It's a, you know, it's a spiffy cocktail beverage that people enjoy. And they also eat them and roast them, and, you know, they're pure protein. They're, you know,
right.
And they're big. They're really, 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 really big. This is some of the larvae. I've got some of my samples. It's really hard to, I don't know. Now you can see my face relative to the size of these things. So here's the one, you know, my thumb, you know, they're big.
Yeah. I've eaten honeybee larvae on a dare, actually, years ago, and I thought that they had kind of a little citrus aftertaste to them. So I think if I was going to eat a bug, I would rather have it, you know, sauteed or something than just eat it raw. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, I haven't eaten any of these.
Oh, come on.
No.
surprised the guy who had the tree didn't try selling them to the local restaurants.
No, he just wanted to, he was a potato farmer and there's not, where he lives there, it's all Dutch folks. So I think if you went to maybe Vancouver, you'd get more into the Asian, the folks that might actually, and that's one of the theories as to, how did they get here? They could have come on a ship, and obviously, or someone could have brought some larvae to raise, to open up a spiffy restaurant in Vancouver, where they probably would have done well. But you can't do that. Yeah. So anyway.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about diluting the DNA. Does anyone knows how far the DNA need to be diluted before they're just will produce all duds? Because if it's one queen producing a lot of other queens, but it's her son that mates with her daughters, how far we go with that?
Yeah. So the hope, I'm not sure if they've actually know in this species how many generations, then it just isn't going to happen anymore. But based on, so the nest zero was pretty lethargic according to the scientists, the first one that we got in 2020. And then now they've experienced, 3 more. That second nest was pretty, they just didn't seem as active, but the other 2 were extremely active. There are 3 different DNA groups that have been introduced. The DNA of the hornets on Vancouver Island is different than the DNA of the hornets that is in Canada, which is different than the DNA of the hornets that are in this lower 48.
Wow.
So so they believe there were 3 introductions, or 3 different hornets from, got on the same boat, or, someone brought them. So they have not, they are certainly talking about that, but as far as I know, they haven't come to any determination as to how many generations, when it would happen. But they're pretty sure that second nest was probably a product of too much inbreeding.
Building on that, Ruthie, we had a question in the chat from Lexi around what you might be able to predict or think about how they might travel, in part because some of them have been posted a little farther east, spotted a little farther east. And so that was kind of the question.
Okay, the only one I know of that was not confirmed, but possible, was the one on the guy's truck cam that was way over on the other side of Everson. It's like way the heck, it's like another 10 or 15 miles on the other side of Linden. And the scientists aren't really convinced that was one, but it could have been, but it's just on a picture. So yeah, so the theories there is, again, they can fly 22 miles an hour. We did have a queen in 2020 that was in Bellingham, right? She was on someone's, that was a verified queen. She was a virgin queen. And virgin queens can overwinter. So what will overwinter? All those hornets in the nest are going to be dead because they only live 3 to 4 weeks, right? So all the workers are going to be dead. The only ones that will overwinter are the queens.
Yes.
And so, it doesn't matter if they've mated or not. Virgin queens can overwinter. Now, whether that virgin queen that we found in Bellingham, which is a good 15 miles away from nest zero, good 15 miles away, whether she and all the other nests we found, whether when you're a virgin queen you just fly around and live out the rest of your life, until you die, that might be why she flew down there. But what their behavior is what they need to understand, right? Is the behavior of a queen to start her nest near, or is the behavior of the queen to try and fly as far away as possible? They just don't know. That data is not available. Again, for the genetic reason, you know, a species exists. You want to, you know, so you don't breed with your brothers. You know, our queens will fly to the furthest drone congregation area so that they don't mate with their own drones, right? Our honeybee queens do that. So, you know, those are the little details of research that need to be done.
She could have hitched a ride too and not really flown all that way. She could have been on a car, a truck, whatever.
Yeah, I'm worried about the hay trucks and stuff and all of the trucks that we have that have all of the raspberries and, you know, blueberries that get carted all over, you know, if they find, you know, somewhere, because they can eat gel and they'll eat, you know, like ripe blackberries and you know, drippings. So that would be a way that would transport the hornets further south. Hay trucks, nice place to hang out, a bale of hay for overwintering. I mean, you know, it gets carted to anywhere. Yeah. Those are the risks that we have, unless we can get them quick. So educate, right? Talk to your neighbors. Do they know what the hornet looks like? Tell them. It's important that everybody recognizes. And where we found them here, and where everyone that has seen one, where they're finding them most of the time is up eating their paper wasp nests or their bald-faced hornet nests. I mean, you know, there's been a lot of like the DNA analysis now done of some of the frass is a whole bunch of bald-faced hornets. So they just go and decapitate the bald-faced hornets, the same thing they do the honeybees. I mean, their exoskeleton is so strong, nothing can sting it. So if you're an insect that stings, you're not going to hurt it. It will not penetrate. And these hornets also can bite. I didn't mention that. And they also can spray their venom. So they can sting you, bite you, and spray their venom in your face.
And it's blinding, right? The venom.
If the venom gets in, yeah, again, it's the volume. It squirts. I mean, it's just the amount of their venom sac is huge. Yeah.
That's crazy. So you mentioned all the counts of all the cells and the various male, queen, worker. So it's safe to say then that based on the spaces that were open where there was no insects, that there's enough population out there to cause trouble, right? I mean, of the 3 nests we found this year, there were males that had hatched.
Only in one of the nests. So nest 3 had 28 males, but that was the nest that probably had, and so would they be viable? I have no idea. That was the nest where they were lethargic. There was no queens being produced yet, right? In that nest, none, 0. None of the nests this year had any queen production.
Oh, that's great news.
You'd have to have queen production this year, right? To be able to overwinter to next year. So all of the hornets in these 3 nests, yeah, they didn't get to queen production yet. 0 queens. You know, next year's queens.
Yeah. Yeah. Assuming we have caught all of the nests there are, which
oh no, that's a huge assumption. Yeah, it's like, yeah, this area, just like down there by you guys, you know what it's like when you're out hiking around. I mean, you know, it's like, goodness, I mean, yeah, we've tried to put, you know, traps up in a lot of places and hope that you get a hit or somebody sees one, but there's huge areas that are wide open.
The other interesting thing is that all the nests have been in alder trees that were rotten, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So alder trees seem to be their favorite.
Well, or they're the ones that we have a lot of, rotten alders, right? It's like, yeah, but we do have maples, and yeah. So again, they're befuddled about the tree thing. It just is not what, yeah. So how will they react in North America? That's what the scientists kept saying. It's different. It's a different area, you know, similar soils and similar climate, but everything's a little bit different. So will they like bald-faced hornets better than honeybees? I don't know. I mean, bald-faced, but honeybees have so much protein that that's what they need. But we don't want them to wipe out all of our native insects either. And they would do that in a short order if we got lots of nests.
So are there 5 staffed entomologists in Washington State now? You said they added 2 more.
No, those are I was talking about the field people.
Okay.
To do trapping. They only started with, it was just Chris and Sven, and then the public relations lady and Jenny. There were 3 entomologists working in the invasive species. And they have to take care of all the invasive species. And actually, we got a lot of invasive species in Washington State. I mean, whether it's some kind of thing that's attacking a new one that's attacking strawberries and they didn't have a budget in 2020. And there is a bill, HR 6761. I usually try and talk about this, that was introduced in 2020. It didn't in the House of Representatives, and it was to fund the eradication of the Asian Giant Hornet. And it would have been a few million a year for 5 years to fund education, trapping, reimbursement for people that lost their hives, and yada, yada, yada. It stayed in committee for a long time, and it finally got rolled into the omnibus bill that was passed into law in last December. But nobody appropriated the money for it. So this year, no one appropriated any money for it. So they are getting money from USDA. They are getting grants from APHIS to help fund some of this stuff. But I'm concerned that when the volunteers, you got to keep people motivated. And after 2 or 3 years, how many people are still going to trap? This year, only 700 and some folks trapped, as opposed to the 1,200. So the number was getting down, even though we found a nest. So I'm of the personal opinion that they're going to need more personnel in the field to pound. It takes a long time to check a trap, especially out in when you're out in the woods. So you got to get there, hike out, do the trap. And so when you think about the size area, so the 2 people I were talking about were 2 field people that were checking traps all day, every day. Yeah, for days. And then when you have live traps, you got to check them daily. It isn't like you just put them up and check them in a week. You got to check those daily. So it's a lot of time spent. I probably spent 4 hours myself checking my trap lines, bottle traps. Took me 4 hours once a week. But,
once a week?
Mhm.
Weekly? Oh
yeah. You got to change the bait weekly. Yeah. It's orange juice and cooking rice wine. Yeah, it evaporates and or you catch so many yellow jackets and bald-faced hornets that now the yellow jackets are walking on top of all the dead bodies that are in there. So it's not going to do any good. So you got to check it and change them out.
Yeah, that's disconcerting that there's a lot of bugs that get caught in the traps. But
that's why the very first year that we trapped, we sent in all of our trappings, right? All of them. And in reality, they counted all of them. So the scientists actually counted how many of what species we were, because the bycatch is are we killing something that we shouldn't be? Did we catch a bunch of bumblebees? So according to them, we're not going to hurt any of the species based on the bottle traps we have up on what we're catching. And for some reason, the only bumblebee that it caught, the only few bumblebees, and there weren't very many that went in there, was a non-native bumblebee, an invasive bumblebee that's in the area. So, but our native bumblebees didn't touch the stuff. So that was pretty interesting. Anyway. And moths, you catch a lot of moths. My apples were wonderful this year. All my moths got caught here.
oh,
And my yellow jackets around my beehives was way down this year too. So, you know, a lot of people put up pheromone traps, and I'm never going to advocate using that fipronil stuff, that poison stuff. Yeah, ever. So these bottle traps work way better than that stuff anyway, and you're not putting poisons out there. But that's just my personal opinion.
Huh. Maybe a good idea for yellow jacket catches.
Oh, in the spring? Yeah, it catches all the queens. Way better, it works way better than the pheromone traps.
Do you feel like King County should be trapping?
I don't know. I mean, that's something that I'd leave to the scientists, you know. Yeah.
There's no way anybody really knows. We're just speculating on which direction they flew.
Yeah, it's observation though. If a lot of people, so, you know, rather than trapping, maybe just education, because, you know, you will know guaranteed if this girl flies up to you, you're going to know it. I mean, you know, they're huge. They're really huge. It's, yeah. You're going to know. There's no way you're going to think that it's a bald-faced hornet or any other insect you've ever seen here, ever. It's going to be like a hummingbird. You're going to think it's a hummingbird. You're going to go, no, that's not a hummingbird. That's one of those hornets. I mean, they're that big.
Gross.
So, any other questions?
So gross.
I had one actually totally unrelated.
Okay.
Can the male sting in the Asian giant hornet?
No.
Ha. Like our bees then.
Yeah. Their sole job, not defense. They just pass on the genetics of the queen. That's it. They feed, eat, hook up, and that's it.
It's cool to know. I do wonder if people might, because I haven't seen an Asian giant hornet, but I have discovered, because it's in my yard, it's a species of wasp that's fairly big. It's like 1.5 inches long, and they lay their eggs inside the bark of trees. I forget the name of those. They're also kind of
Gold diggers. They have those. They have that long. That's So the wood wasp. They're a wood wasp. They have that long funnel that they lay their eggs down in. Yeah, that was one of the common ones that people were thinking they'd seen an Asian giant hornet. The difference with the Asian giant hornet, their girth. They are husky girls. I mean, these girls are thick and big. They're just thick. They're just a really husky girl. Yeah, they're just husky. Where all the other ones are kind of skinny and long. So yeah, these things are thick. Yeah, I wish I could. Yeah, if we had human meetings, you know, someday we'll have human meetings again. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you've done a good job of getting pretty descriptive. I feel like I remember seeing that picture of a man's palm with 3 of them filling it.
Yeah.
That's very descriptive because it, you know, it's a big man's hand with these big fingers, and these girls were just laying there. I don't know if they were female, but
probably. Yeah.
That was impressive because it really did make the scope very clear.
Yeah. So your honeybee hives won't be attacked until the fall. You know, that kind of thing. And when you're walking yellow jackets, watch out for a big one, right? Like the beekeeper on Vancouver Island. That was just amazing. I mean,
crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're
wonderful. Wonderful to see your presentation, and thank you for putting it together for us. I hope, I think that we spread the word. Others will want you to share it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's quite entertaining.
Well, you're more than welcome.
You're that first person experience, you know, you're not telling somebody else's story.
No. And I'm just a beekeeper, and just like you guys, I mean, I'm just a normal human that all these, it's like, oh my God, now the movie people are here too. Oh, geez. Yeah, it was pretty entertaining. It's like, they didn't put makeup on me though, so that was good. Like, not that kind of movie. Oh, okay. Well, you guys have a good meeting, and thanks. And yeah, educate as many humans as you come in contact with. Tell them about the
Yep.
Asian Giant Hornet.
That's great.
Thank
We
you.
will.
Thank
Uh-huh.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ruthie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this begins the next part of our meeting, which is the annual business meeting, where we elect the next year's board, which is, of course, 2022. And those of you who'd like to participate just by voting, you're very appreciated. I mean, it's not that we have to have you, but having a little circle of members is nice. So how shall we begin?
For the meeting, I need to read the minutes of the last meeting. So these are the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Puget Sound Beekeeping Association, September 14th, 2021. Online Zoom meeting started 7 p.m. Following officers were present: Kit Hyatt, President; Eileen Maloney, Vice President; Bruce Becker, Treasurer; Maureen Sullivan, Secretary. Following board members were present: Don Beck, Nancy Beckett, Magali Danny Eaton. Ex officio President Jeff Steenbergen was present. Call to order. Meeting called to order at 7 p.m. via Zoom. The minutes of the March 30th, 2021 board meeting were read. Motion to approve the minutes, seconded and carried without dissent. We reviewed an updated list of trustees. The 2021 trustees are Nancy Beckett, Neely Gladys, and 2 open positions. The 21-22 trustees, Don Beck, Elena Jorgensen, Magali Danny Eaton, and 2 open positions. We then moved on to discussion. Arthur Cry's presentation regarding PSBA trustees, concerns with conflicts of interest, limiting involvement by beekeepers. A summary of the discussion by the officers and the trustees. Trustees should reread the conflict of interest form. Most, if not all, issues can be resolved by notifying the board that a situation exists, detailing how it was resolved. It's important to understand what is offered to one must be offered to all and of equal benefit. Suggestion to spend half hour at the beginning of the first board meeting of the year on this subject to help new trustees understand, rather than asking them to simply read the conflict of interest sheet. We also reviewed fiduciary duty of trustees. And that was most of the meeting. There was a motion to adjourn the meeting, second and carried without dissent. Meeting adjourned at 9:18 p.m. And that was the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Ned,
I move to approve. Minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good meeting. Okay, so now we can get underway with who it is that would like to run for office. We have Maureen. Are you kind of in document mode so we can?
I'm taking notes.
Oh, you're taking notes, the
No.
secretary. Okay.
Yes. So what do you need? How can I help you?
Well, just to list the offices that need to be reelected and based on the 2-year terms, and to gather names for those who would like to be to run for office.
Okay. All right. So I have for the 2021 trustees, so they expire if they want to be reelected, are Nancy Beckett, Neely Gladys, and 2 open positions.
And everyone else is in their second year coming up, so that's awesome.
Correct, with 2 open positions on the 21-22 slate.
Okay, so those are the trustees, and then insofar as officers, so then the trustees that do not need to be reelected would be Dawn and Magali
And Elena,
and Elena.
correct.
I'll share my screen with the website up so that you can, I think there's some visual learners here, so that would help.
Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, screen 2. Okay, you should be able to see the screen. I think this should match what you have, Maureen.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
So we need to vote on all the officer positions and this slate.
Yes.
And we can backfill these 2 if there's people who'd like to step up and run for the remainder of the year left on those terms.
Correct.
Yeah, that's where the 4 openings comes from. Super cool. Okay. Okay. So I know Nancy let me know that she's on her way to the meeting. She had to take her, she and her husband share one car. So she'll get here as soon as she can. I just texted her to let her know we're into the business part of the meeting. So I know she'd like to run again. And Neely will not run again. So then the officers, I guess I can begin and then each officer could speak for themselves. I am open to re-election. Eileen?
No, I'm actually feeling I need to take some time away to work on the projects that I've started for myself this year.
Are you open to being a trustee and stepping away from VP, or would you like to just be a supporting member?
I'd love to just be a supporting member. I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed with.
Okay.
I'm trying to
Okay.
get a startup going.
No,
so-
your life is very busy. It's always crazy stories. Oh, Nancy says she's here. She texted me, but I can't tell that she's here. So
Nancy might be our number. Nancy is often our number.
it's 760-497. Oh, I hear your voice.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so then we have an open vice president and then a secretary, Maureen.
Yes. I will secretary again.
Okay, good to know. I'm so happy. And Bruce isn't here, but I know he's open to hanging in there. And Jeff, how does your term continue? Well, because until you're not the ex-president, so you're hanging
Pretty
in
much,
there too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bylaws say immediate ex-president, so Jeff is stuck, trapped.
That's good because we
Well,
rely
no,
on
I
you a
can't
lot.
be trapped. So the bylaws also only say that presidents can only run for 3 terms. So this will be your 3rd term, Kit. So this will be my last year as ex officio, regardless.
Somehow I thought that was a special rule. We changed the bylaws for you, Jeff, and I didn't think it would happen that I would have a 3rd year until someone pointed me out.
We also
You
didn't
know.
think COVID would happen. So, you know.
Yeah, so that's another good point. Yeah, I feel like things are just beginning to kind of gain momentum, and especially the first year of my term was awfully quiet.
I have a question about that. So if, for instance, Jeff ran and had 3 terms and now he's not the president, can he run again?
Yes, we did change the bylaws that after, I don't have the exact wording, but yes, a former president could come back and rerun again in the future after having taken a break.
Okay, good to know. That's how we did it in Sonoma, but I hadn't heard anything about whether or not that was a provision for Puget Sound beekeepers.
Yeah, when we switched it, we did add that, but I don't think we want people taking advantage of that. It's nice to have new people and new decisions, but in an emergency situation is what we were thinking.
Right.
where we needed someone to be able to step up, that could happen.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Good to know.
The kit will get
Okay.
a president next year, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's at the top. That's what you taught me, is your number one job is to find a replacement.
Yes.
Or maybe you told me that, Maureen. That's did stick.
I know I told you that. So, but
Yeah.
maybe other people have said that too. We've been passing that legendary knowledge down from president to president for some time. So,
It's valid. So, okay, so then I am interested. I would actually, I know I don't have to like put it out there into the abyss that Kathy Cox is interested in running for vice president. So, is there anyone else that is interested in being voted for vice president? And how about trustees? Is there anyone present who would like to become a trustee and become a part of the board in 2022 and 23, I guess? I guess you could have your choice of a single year or a double. Well, those of you who are here and not wanting to run, it's wonderful to have you anyway. I want to just say that you don't have to stick your hat in the ring, but it's great to have you participate. Okay, so I have to say that it's hard to create energy for participation without in-person, interaction. It's really, I'm disappointed there aren't people who are interested in running, but on the other hand, you have to draw people into it and get them excited about it and ask them to participate. And there hasn't been that opportunity. I don't know how that would happen. So anyway, do we need to formally vote?
What we can do is we can blank slate vote for you for president, Kathy for vice president, Maureen for secretary, Bruce for treasurer, and then renew Nancy. And if no one new is stepping up, we can just blank vote the whole slate. Just a yes, no approval. And it looks like we have roughly 5 people on here that I don't recognize. Well, no, I recognize Amy. So there's 4 people I don't initially recognize. So as long as you're a paid member for 2021, you can vote. If you're not, just don't raise your hand. So I think that would probably be the best thing is to, I don't think we need to make a motion or anything for it, but we can just, take a hand raise of people who vote for the slate, the full slate of officers and trustees. Maureen, does that sound kosher?
Yes. I was just
You're
trying to,
the one that has to document this, so.
right, no, I'm just writing down the notes. Yes, because I can quickly try to check on memberships, but I think we can work on trust. It will be somewhat curious because those of us who are running for office it would be best if we didn't vote, correct?
There's no one running against you, so you do get a vote and you can vote
You're right.
for yourself.
It's a self-affirmation night. Whoa.
The only time it becomes an issue doing it this way is if there's anyone running, 2 people running for the same position.
Right.
And we don't have that.
Right. I've got the slate down. Jeff, why don't you formally ask for?
Yeah, I'm looking for where they moved. Someone said it's down.
Yeah, I don't see the
Where's
hand
the
raised.
hand raised? They moved it somewhere. And someone
It's
said
under
last week.
It's in
reactions.
reaction.
And they moved it to reaction.
Thank you.
Okay, where is the reactions over here? You have to open that dialog. So under more, you can, if you don't have it open, you can find reactions, and that'll pop up in a little window, and then in there's a raise hand icon. So everyone who'd like to vote for the full slate, please raise your hand.
I don't know. I can't find that on my screen.
Nancy,
Yes.
just tell us then.
Yeah,
It
so
works as well.
I'm actually sharing my screen. Did you see how I shared my screen and I went to reactions there? So there's this
No.
little control. No, maybe
No.
you can't see it because it's
No.
part of Zoom, so it's filtered
Yeah, it's
out.
below
Touch on
your
the
screen.
bottom, Nancy, if you touch on the bottom of your screen, it brings up all the stop video, mute, participants and all that. And on the far right-hand side, it has a little face that says reactions. And if you touch on that, then it asks you if you want to raise your hand.
I can do it.
Well, I can't find it on my screen, so
Well, it's good. We know you're raising your hand, right?
yes.
So maybe voice
Okay.
vote would be the most expeditious in this situation.
Okay. And Doug and Joshua, are you, I guess nay. Is that what we would ask next, is who dissents on doing this?
So if you just use the straight parliamentary procedure and just said all in favor, and then everybody unmute yourself and you could say aye. And then you could say all opposed and everyone unmutes themselves and says nay or opposed.
Beautiful.
And then you've got your vote. So I think it's sticking with that, I think, rather than trying to find the reaction buttons for everyone and that
Yeah.
So,
And that makes it more anonymous too. So we're not like pinning each person
Right.
for what their vote is.
right. So there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen.
So go ahead, Kit.
So go ahead, Kit, and what?
I move that we approve the slate as set forth. And
Okay,
all in favor, then you
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all
Oh, you
those
say opposed, all opposed.
opposed? So there we go, the hand issue. Okay,
Motion.
motion passed. Thank you.
Go.